Paragliding doesn't need to be dangerous. In the next 15 minutes, I'll show you the key moves that you need to master from the methods I've developed in over 30 years of instructing. By the end of the video, you'll know how to get cleaner launches, climb faster, and land on a leaf. Good students get rewards, so at the end I'll share a link for you to get a special free skills pack. Are you ready for some intensive training? Let's go! When you stand upright on the launch site, you lose command of the wing power and your harness can ride up. Place one leg in a leading position and sweep your arms back to load the chest strap properly. Keeping the wing loaded helps you time your launch run correctly and prevents collapses. When your harness is set wrong, it'll feel as if you're tipping around in the sky. You'll want to hold onto the risers or steady your hands on the brakes for security. Adjust your harness at home to find the perfect balance point for flying. This will allow you to sink properly into the harness and relax. When you push your brakes forwards or outwards, it sets you up for balancing on the brakes, which is a disaster in a collapse scenario. It creates a force that interferes with your weight shift and changes the feeling of the wing. Pull the brake down the line of the riser to get maximum power and control. When you drop your brakes on a launch site or grab them in a hurry, you can get a twist or lose control. Start with your hands through the brakes and don't let them go until you're packing away. This gives you instant and continuous control on the ground with full access to your stall point. You'll never again need to find your brakes. Just pull your arms back. When you pull the brakes in strong wind, the wing powers up and drags you into things. Learn to pin the wing on the rear risers. If you land with the risers in your hands and use them for touchdown, you can kill the wing and keep control. The rear risers are also useful for going uphill and for some launch situations. When you don't recognize a stall, the wing can do unexpected things to you on launch and landing. Develop your feeling of the stall point at low level so it becomes an automatic sense you can draw on throughout your flying. When you dump a disconnected wing on a windy launch site, you will get a mess. Keep your wing connected to your harness when you pack away to simplify your setup and increase launch site safety. This also means you can remove or secure your Brummel hooks. These are the most dangerous invention since, well, paragliding. Follow my simple method to pack and lay out the same every time. Get connected before you open the wing. When you miss things during your pre-flight checks, it can spell disaster. But most pre-flight jingles leave out key points or put them in the wrong order. Follow this complete check system and chill out. When you overpower the pull-up, your wing will shoot and pull you into danger. Run with the wind to depower it. Use an asymmetric launch method to cope with strong winds and crosswinds, because when the power is to one side, you don't get lifted, so it's easier to stay in control. When you fly nervously in traffic, you create more traffic. Novice pilots often fly too far out when the ridge is on their right, which causes a new line of traffic in the ridge flow. Stay close on the right pass and wide when the ridge is on your left so you don't endanger oncomers with your wake turbulence. Manage your separation with the pilot ahead of you by using your brakes to control your speed, just as you would when driving. Or turn around. Look first, lean, then turn. When you fly with some brakes on all the time, you might get results in steady soaring conditions. But once out of lifting air, your best glide is usually hands up. In headwind and sink, you need to speed up some. And in tailwind and lift, you can slow down a little. Learn to judge your glide point by watching a tall object against the background terrain, so you can see where you will land long before you get there. When you have a very low or very high ground speed, you're flying in strong wind, so there will be turbulence when you are near the terrain. Stay away from sharp edges and avoid the lee area. Avoid narrow channels and corners where the Venturi effect will increase the wind speed, because you might lose the ability to move forward to safety in these zones. When you always keep your wing above your head, you don't train your brain in the spatial awareness that will keep you safe in extreme situations. Practicing 360s and gentle spiral exits, turn reversals, and dolphins prepares you for 3-axis movement and protects you from disorientation. It introduces more energy for you to manage, which builds your sense of freedom once you master the flow. Instead of just steering around the sky, you begin to really fly. When you don't catch wing pitch, you'll have more collapses than other pilots. To stay in control when you fly in thermic conditions, keep your hands up during the climbing phase and pull the brakes as the wing shoots past vertical. Then release. This is active flying. When you don't respond to a loss of riser tension, your wing will collapse on that side. This can turn your wing into the terrain or result in rapid height loss. What you need to do is simple. Lean slightly away from the collapse and steer gently away from the collapse. Look up to see what you've got. Then look at the terrain to guide your aircraft into safe space before doing a slow, deep, singular pump to clear the collapse. When you don't practice different landing setup patterns, you get caught out when the field is tricky. The aircraft approach isn't always the best path in. Use an L shape through the low point to dive in safely with minimal turns. When you make S turns instead of a braked approach, it's easy to overshoot. Steady brakes or a few butterfly beats on a straight final can destroy your glide angle, especially with some headwind. But first, train your stall point so you don't mess up going into the wind shadow or shear layer. When you don't know how to do the swoop flare, upslope landings can be intimidating, so you'll overlook many safe options and end up struggling to get into a sloping field. Practice the swoop timing on easy flat fields so you can progress to slope landings and finally upslope success. When you don't recognize weather dangers, you get caught out in dangerous situations in the air. This is a sea breeze punching inland. This is the back end of a strong wind orographic cloud. This is a convergence line with no inversion layer to limit the vertical development of the cloud. Train your foresight by watching more examples of weather from the air. When you only use wind direction and strength to choose your flying days, you won't identify the effect of thermals, which can change the forecast. Reading the skew T will show you how strong the thermals will be, where they'll break apart, and the dangers of thunderstorms. Here the thermals will accelerate, here they will slow, and there's a risk of thunderstorms in the afternoon. When you fly in a bad air mass, you won't enjoy paragliding. Every day that you have a nice day's flying, look at the synoptic charts when you get home, so you can learn the pattern that makes it good. Where is that good air coming from? For example, this is the polar air mass in the UK. Cracking good flying. When you have a vague idea of where the next thermal is, you'll probably go down, because near the thermal is mostly sinking air. Look for a dry, dark-colored cloud field with sloping ground leading to a high point, especially if it has an obstacle on the upwind end that can shelter the warming air from steady wind of 10 to 20 kilometers an hour. When you don't know what the wind direction is, you can't judge the thermal drift. So you might have identified a great trigger point, but you fly just past the thermal, in the sink again. It's easy to identify the wind by turning a full circle and watching your GPS speed. When it's lowest, you're pointing into wind. When you try to soar close to the terrain in thermic conditions, you will be dumped into the ridge. Scratching only works if you turn in the lift, using tight figure of 8 moves to ride the thermal up the terrain. This is an advanced skill that needs practice on an easy soaring site to build up your judgment of your proximity. When you do the natural thing in a big collapse, you will probably have a cascade. We have a fear of falling, so the natural tendency is to overreact to a collapse by pulling too much brake. By training the correct inputs in calm conditions, you can prepare yourself to look up, lean away, feather the brake onto a straight course, pump out the deflation. When you get thrown into a spiral for the first time, your brain doesn't know how to interpret the G-force. Prepare yourself by doing at least 3 spiral dives, so you become familiar with the feeling and develop confidence with the exit. Simply pull the outside brake and do nothing else. When you throw your reserve, you can cause a new disaster if you do nothing else. You must disable the paraglider by pulling down on the rear risers. This stops the dive or rotations that can pull against the reserve and massively increase your descent rate. When you buy the wrong wing, it can damage your flying performance. Cheap isn't cheap if it leads you to an accident or erodes your confidence. The more performance a wing has, the cheaper it is on the second-hand market, because there are fewer buyers in that class. So these old wings can seem tempting. Always consider what wing you'd like to be on when the air goes bad, and choose a class of wing that matches your experience. When you snap a line on a rocky launch, what are you going to do? If you make a knot in any paraglider line, it massively reduces the strength, so it cannot hold the weight it's required to. Keep a length of unsheathed line and a needle so you can splice any field repair you need to. When you don't get your wings serviced, it can go out of trim and lose its safety rating. Porosity is easy to check. Try to suck air through the leading edge fabric. You can also do home trim checking, but line strength is impossible to verify unless you snap a line in controlled conditions. Making trim adjustments can be time-consuming and complicated, and might require lines to be manufactured. So send your wing to the professionals at least every 2 years or 150 hours. You spent 15 minutes with me and already you've leveled up your flying. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more like this. I've taken extracts from many courses here. You can currently get access to the whole system by becoming a member of my Flight Academy. Start at the beginning and level up through the program as you build layers of knowledge. And you'll improve all aspects of your flying and become a cross-country ace. Let's keep your learning progression going. Get started by joining my mailing list. You'll get a personal invitation to my academy and a free skills pack to help you master some key skills. Join the pilots at the leading edge of flight training and fly with confidence.